estamos con una exclusiva. Vamos a entrevistar al señor Donald Patz, que es un enólogo famosísimo de California. Tal vez ustedes conocen o han tomado la marca que él desarrolló con un socio que se llamó Patz Hall. Y es un vino, o mejor dicho, eran vinos de Chardonnay y Pinot Noir, de vinos de enorme calidad. Ya mismo él debe estar entrando. Pues seguimos con la emergencia del coronavirus aquí en Puerto Rico y prácticamente en todo el mundo. Voy a aprovechar para preguntarle a Donald cómo le está yendo allá en California. Obviamente es una situación muy compleja en todas partes del mundo. Hoy vamos a hablar de los vinos que está trayendo el Almacén del Vino de Fernandez. Hola Astrid, ¿cómo estás? Qué bueno verte, querida. Vamos a hablar hoy de dos vinos, el Maritana, que es un Chardonnay 100%, y vamos a hablar del Pinot Noir. El Pinot Noir se llama Le Rouge y el Chardonnay se llama La Rivière. Ya Donald se unió, ya mismo lo voy a agregar. Gracias Astrid, te mando un beso a ti y a tus nenas. Vamos a agregar ya mismo a Donald, pero les quiero comentar que en los próximos días voy a estar haciendo otras entrevistas. Mañana voy a tener al señor Alessandro Celay de Rocca di Frasinello, una gran bodega de la Toscana. Obviamente en Italia hay una situación muy complicada con el tema del coronavirus. Vamos a tener también a Isaac Muga de Bodegas Muga, una bodega que gusta mucho aquí en Puerto Rico. Y vamos a entrevistar también a Carlos López de la Calle, el hijo de Juan Carlos de Artadi. Como saben, pues llevo un tiempito ya comunicándole. Anoche tomé un buen Pinot Noir, me dice Alessandro. Qué bueno, hermano. Este Pinot Noir de Maritana está espectacular. Y tú que vives en California lo podrás disfrutar. Bueno, el otro día estaba hablando con mi buena amiga Miriam Ocasio de Puerto Rico Eats, hablando un poco de los restaurantes aquí en Puerto Rico, lo que podemos hacer para ayudarles. Y me dijo algo pues que me tocó el corazón. Dice, si no ayudamos a estas personas ahora que nos han dado tanta alegría, hemos ido allí a compartir con nuestras familias, nuestras parejas, nuestros amigos, a esos restaurantes, pues cuando acabe la emergencia no tendremos a dónde ir. Y es la verdad. Y en cuanto al mundo del vino, pues yo creo que ahora mismo tenemos un compromiso, nosotros los consumidores, los que compramos vino, los que amamos el mundo del vino, con ayudar a los lugares que han sido más afectados, como Italia, España, por supuesto Estados Unidos, California, el área de Washington State. Esta industria pues le va a tomar un tiempo salir de esta emergencia, porque una vez acabe la emergencia de salud, la emergencia sanitaria, pues vendrá lo que sabemos que es un tiempo difícil económico, ¿no?, para estas bodegas. Bueno, siendo las 8:58, yo creo que Donald, send me a little wave if you're there so that I can add you. I think you are. A couple of us are here waiting to talk to you and, discuss some of your wines, talk about your career, and obviously about how you guys are faring in California with the COVID-19. So I think we can go live now. It's 8:58, so I'm just going to go ahead and add Mr. Donald Patz, Dr. Pinot. Here we go. Wait for Donald to connect. Put my glasses here. See. Hey, Donald.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. What is it for you? Is it 5:58?
5:58. Hold on here. I'm just adjusting the sound so I can communicate properly.
Sure. All right. How are you, man?
Well, good. I mean, like everybody, we're all freaked out over this crazy coronavirus thing, and it's certainly impacting living in the Napa Valley or anywhere in the United States, including Puerto Rico, our good friends and Americans as well. I just want to make sure everybody understands. I know you're Americans too. But yeah, it's freaking everybody out, and I'm sure that everybody in Puerto Rico feels the same. You don't really know where it's going to go. You don't really know how it's going to impact your life in the long run. So
I know you were scheduled. I know you were scheduled to come down. I was talking to my dear friends from Almacén del Vino, Andrés Lugo, Cristina Teixidor, and we were very excited to have you and host you here because you've been an incredible winemaker for a number of years now. Now you have this new winery, this new brand, and a couple of other cool projects. And I thought that at some point you were thinking of coming to Puerto Rico in Q3 or Q4 of this year. And it's incredible how much the world has changed in a matter of weeks. And I guess my first question is how the situation there in California. I mean, I know that probably because of the fact that you don't live in areas that are so densely populated as New York, you have a lot of open spaces. Maybe in the case of where you have the vines, maybe the contagion rate is not that big. But how is this affecting the industry? I guess that's my first question.
Well, I think the biggest change is that all the wine tasting rooms are closed.
Yeah.
So there is no place to come here to go wine tasting. All the restaurants are closed. There's no place to go to dinner and share great wines and great times with people like we have been able to do forever since I've lived here. So that's the biggest change. But and there, in fact, are a few cases of coronavirus in the Napa Valley. They just announced one yesterday in St. Helena. Apparently a gentleman, I think it was a gentleman, had a friend from Southern California, had been down there visiting, and came back with the virus.
It's too bad.
But was immediately quarantined, so hopefully it's not getting around. But we, as I just mentioned at the very beginning, we just don't know where it's going from here. How many people are ultimately going to be affected directly or indirectly in the end is yet to be discovered, I think. And I noticed that in your feed that you'd spoken with some people from Italy recently, and I'm imagining.
And I'm talking to some tomorrow again. Piedmont is only 2 hours away by car from Bergamo, which is ground zero. They have 1,000 people died yesterday there. It's unbelievable. It's unheard of.
It is unbelievable.
And these are uncharted waters. But we'll get through. I mean, the world has been through a lot of things in the past, and if we really obey the authorities and stay home and quarantine, and we got technology, thank God. I mean, we can communicate through this means. And hopefully in the coming days and weeks, I can lend my voice to a lot of wineries. Because I think that after all of this thing is done with, we got to support the restaurants. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and she was telling me a lot of the restaurants now are offering, takeout and delivery. So we got to support them at this time because they have a very large overhead with staff and water and utilities. So if we don't support them now, we won't have a place to go once life resumes.
True,
right?
Or the only places we'll have to go are chain restaurants that serve an important purpose. I'm not saying that they don't, but it's not the place that you think about going to celebrate and share your life with people. I mean, Applebee's being what it is nice enough for people, but I haven't been there in years, and I don't really want to go back. So we're going to do the best we can.
We all have our little spot that's dear to our heart. I mean, my wife and I, we go to this Greek restaurant that's very close to where we live, and it's like a one-guy show, and the food is delicious. And I mean, he's being impacted by this. So, let's do away with the negative discussion and let's get into wine. I'm a wine lover. I'm a lawyer. I'm not an enologist or a sommelier. I'm a consumer. I guess is the first and foremost player in the industry, the most important one. And
absolutely, consumers are like way more important than winemakers.
So I just want to learn a little bit about your career. How did you get involved with wine? Did it start with your family, or you picked it up afterwards?
It's not my family, but I just want to jump back one really quickly and say, yes, in fact, I had plans to come to Puerto Rico later this year. In fact, I think I was supposed to come in the spring, but I had to make some changes in my personal schedule that was going to make that impossible. So I want to come as soon as possible. I love it there. My wife and I have been there a couple of times already. We look forward to coming back and see our friends in Puerto Rico. It's a beautiful place, and if anybody has not been there, you really ought to make a special effort to go.
Thank you.
The whole culture there is just so warm and open, and we've had a great time. So anyway, so let's the beginnings for me in the wine industry came not because of my family, but because I was a pre-med student going to the University of Oregon and thinking about, well, what happens if I don't get into med school, right? And so I was curious about all kinds of different things, and wine was one of the things I was curious about. Read a bunch of books, did a bunch of tastings, tasted with friends, had wine whenever I could at home, and it just sort of developed from sort of something I was curious and thought was fun to something I really thought, I really should probably do this. I should try to find a way to get into the wine business. And I started off working as a salesperson.
Mm-hmm. In Oregon? Are you originally from there?
I am. Well, my family moved there when I was in middle school. But yes, that's where I started in the wine business. I was a salesman in both Eugene, Oregon, and in Portland, Oregon for a while. not too long, about a year and a half. And then eventually decided that if I really want to be in the wine business, maybe I ought to move to where the wine business really is. Is Oregon is small and literally couldn't afford to pay the guys that were owning the wineries there, let alone hiring somebody like me. So moving to California in 1983 was a big step for me. Then I ended up working for Flora Springs in 1985, and James Hall was the assistant winemaker at Flora Springs, and that's how the two of us met. And eventually it became Patz and Hall.
Big, huge brand for a number of years. It was one of my favorites. I remember having plenty of Patz and Hall, incredible reviews, and some wines had a lot of finesse, others had a little bit more of power. So that's when you first sort of hooked up with him.
Yes, we worked together at Flora Springs, and then he became the winemaker at Honig Cellars. Yeah. And then we began making Patz and Hall at Honig in 1988. And seems like not that long ago, but I see pictures from that time. My kids are little, and now my son yesterday closed on a house. I mean, he's not exactly a little kid anymore. First house he's purchased. So that's pretty exciting when your kids are doing stuff like that.
How long were you in the project? I mean, how long? I know that the brand is still around, but for how long were you at the helm?
We were the original four owners. Sold the company in 2016. So from 1988 till 2016, it was 100% owned by four people.
Okay.
And all of us worked there. So it was my ex-wife, James Hall, and his longtime sweetheart, Ann Moses. And then all the names are still on the back label. In case you're wondering who used to own it, it's still on the back label.
I still have some of those bottles from your time there. I mean, those are long-lived wines. They're amazing. Oh, I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Andres Lugo just joined, the director of the wine portfolio for Almacén Vino. Great guy, dear friend of mine, and he came on board, I guess, probably a year ago, a little more than that. I don't have no recollection, but he's brought some incredible wines to the fold. I mean, Almacén del Vino is one of the top importers and distributors here. I mean, they carry amazing wines. So, I'm always talking to the shops here and the importers because I like to communicate the culture of wine. I think it's a great bridge for people to... they're asking if you make any magnums of your wines. I guess we can take questions. I'm probably going to show one now.
Not of the Maritana yet, but it's my plan for the 2019s to be bottled. But I also have this crazy little brand that I'm doing with Francois Villard. And this is a magnum. We do magnums.
It is a magnum. It is a magnum. Andres says is saying hi that he sends you his best regards. So, I started doing this about 10 years ago when people had, I guess, the capacity to do broadcasts of things that they're passionate about. Some people got involved with politics, others with, gastronomy, makeup, movies, all sorts of things, carpentry. And, I said, I love wine. I love to learn. And through wine, you learn about a bunch of things. You learn about, agriculture, history, religion, politics, geography, so many different things. And
it's really true.
What I always say is that, I could sit down on the same, across the table from a person with whom I have nothing in common. I mean, political views, way of life, the way to raise a family. But if we share the same Pinot, we got something to talk about, right?
Yeah.
So that's really the reason why I started all of this. So tell me about, I got two samples of your wines are right here. So cheers to that. This is how we toast in the virtual world. We click the screen. And so I got two Maritana wines. I got the Chardonnay.
Yes.
This is La Rivière. How do you pronounce that?
You can pronounce it any way you like as long as you pay for it.
If it's La Rivière, I don't want to sound like a dumbass.
It's French. It's French. So you can, but English speakers are terrible at speaking other languages, so we're bad at the pronunciation. I pronounce it La Rivière, but it's, I'm sure, not perfect in French. There's a purpose to having La Rivière and La Rousse as the names of the two AVA wines. Really, they're blends of multiple sites. The purpose is, in the past, both when I worked at Flora Springs and at with Patz and Hall, if you had vineyard names or some other kind of name attached to some of your wines, and then other ones didn't, then the other ones, especially if they were, you know, sort of the entry level for your brand, became the regular version. And there's nothing regular about either one of these wines. They're made exactly like, you know, the absolute top of what I do. So by giving them a name, now they just won't be regular.
Yeah, Edwin Alfonso sends his best regards. Edwin worked for a number of years with another big importer here that carried Patz and Hall. So he sends his best regard. Edwin, un abrazo, a big hug for you too. Yeah, okay. So before we get into the wines, tell me about Maritana, the project, when it began, and how did you come about finding the place and the name?
Yeah, well, those are great questions. When we sold the company in 2016, I signed an agreement with it. We sold it to San Michel Wine Estates out of Washington State. Yeah, and they were great guys. I enjoyed where I continued to work with them for a year, really wanting, from my point of view, more than anything else, to transfer some of the culture that created the Patz and Hall wines. James Hall is still there. He's still making the wines for Patz and Hall. So there's a continuity. Don't misunderstand. But some of the continuity that I wanted to do, it's just impossible to do any other way. So I stayed a year. At the end of that year, I sat down and had a nice visit with the gentleman that I reported to. And it's clear they really weren't sure, you know, what they wanted me to do, if anything. And I said, look, easy answer here. You don't have to pay me anymore if you just release me from my non-compete. Okay. And they said, okay. So 2017, May 1st of 2017, I hit the ground running. I began looking, actually, even before that, I started looking for grapes, but signed my contracts after the 1st of May in order to find the fruit that I wanted to create these new wines. And actually, I'm doing 3. You saw the terminum from, that's a Marsanne Roussanne blend and a Syrah. Wow. And I have a Cabernet blend, project as well. But let's focus on the Maritana stuff. Mm-hmm. I was really thinking about, you know, how would I have done it differently if I started Patz and Hall in 2017? Because the world doesn't need another one. You know, there's already one Patz and Hall out there, and they're doing just fine, thank you. They don't really need me to do another one. So one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to focus on a smaller area. We bought grapes from as far north as Mendocino and as far south as Monterey County for Patz and Hall. And I said to myself, look, as a one-man show, I really need to focus so that I'm not running all the time, driving from vineyard to vineyard, hours and hours and hours. And so I decided that my favorite place, my personal favorite place for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in California is the Russian River. And yes, there's been an extension out into the Sonoma Coast. It's very interesting. There are other parts of California very interesting for these two grape varieties. But for me, Russian River has always been the closest part to my heart. And I had good friends there with great vineyard sources. So it was a really easy move for me to call up some of these guys and say, hey, what do you got available now? And then what are we going to do going forward from here as well? So 2017 was really the start. And that's the wines that you're tasting, the very first vintage out. There's some changes that have happened since then in 2018. But the idea going forward is really very much the same. And I didn't want to, no, as I said earlier, Patz and Hall, that's already been done. So how am I going to make these wines differently? What is it that appeals to me today that really would be fun to do? And I think there'd be a lot of other people who would like to try them as well. And I focused on 2 things. One is with Chardonnay, I wanted to pick the grapes just a little bit less ripe, greater acidity, a little more focus, more of that perfumey character coming through, and a lot less new barrels. So I'm using about 90% 1- and 2-year-old barrels, and about 10% new barrels on Chardonnay.
The nose of the Pinot is intoxicating, man. With the Caravan, I just poured it, and you know, I'm probably, I don't know how many inches away from the glass, and it's intoxicating, man. Oh my God. Continue. I caught you up.
No, that's great. So I wanted a refreshing style that was serious and focused and had great density and intensity. But at the same time, there was a freshness and a lightness to the wine that allowed it to be the most important thing, I think, in wine is to produce pleasure. And for white wines, for me, it's refreshing. It should be there should be something really refreshing about it, really cleanse the palate and prepare you for the next bite of food or the next glass of wine, whatever. So that's what I wanted to do, and I began looking for sources specific to that, and the Duttons were the key part of 2017. About 60% of the grapes came from Dutton Ranch, 40% came from another vineyard. That as soon as I pick the grapes, I get an email from a friend of mine saying, "Hey, by the way, we bought that vineyard, and you're not getting Chardonnay from there anymore." So I went out in 2018 and added some other vineyards, but. Yeah, barrel fermented, surly aged, very much a Burgundian model in terms of
very Burgundian. Very. We're gonna get into the wines. Why the name Maritana?
Well, I thought I made it up. I was really thinking. I had a bunch of other names that I thought would be great, and as soon as you run them through Google or Wine Searcher, you find out everyone else thought those were good names too. Donald, you weren't so much of a genius. So I came about Maritana from. A sort of thought process about Sonoma. So Sonoma to me is really most reflected by the fact that there's an ocean nearby and there's a mountainous area that really, those two things are the primary drivers of the climate. So I took oceans and that became maritime.
Maritime and Mar ocean, yeah.
Yeah, and then the mountains became Montana, so I took the end of Montana and the beginning of Maritime and smashed them together.
I love, because that's exactly what it conveys to, I guess, the eye of the mind in many ways. Maritana sounds maritime, but also with a mountain component. So I guess you achieved that. All right, let's get into the wines, man. Let's get into the first one. I got this Sonoma County La Riviere 2017, available with our friends from Almacén del Vino of Fernandez. I mean, the nose, you were saying that you like to pay tribute to Burgundy. I mean, to me, it reminds me of those great Pouligny Montrachet or Corton Charlemagne, those lots of baked or golden apple. You got those notes of stony, flinty notes. You have that delicious sort of a bone fruit of sorts, and you have that little touch of it's maybe white honey, but it does have a little touch of a pleasant sweetness to it. But I guess it's not sweetness, but like honey apricot. Delicious nose. And where are you getting on that nose?
Well, I think you covered everything. The thing that I really find interesting about Russian River, and it's a labeling thing that makes it look like it's only from Sonoma County, but in fact, if you look really closely, you'll see it says Russian River Valley, and now we're required to include Sonoma County as part of it. It's got to be Russian River Valley of Sonoma County, whatever. So this is really, truly 100% Russian River fruit. What I loved about Russian River Chardonnay is that, one, it seems to have a delicacy that some other areas oftentimes don't have, and maybe that's winemaking choices or vineyard choices, but I really liked the lighter texture, and also there's a floral character to the grapes, to the wines that are made from Chardonnay out of Russian River that I think is really consistent, and all of the other things that you talked about I think is true. There was a tiny bit of botrytis in 2017, and I think that's lending itself to that honeyed kind of character. Not sweet at all. This is absolutely dry, but
they're saying that they love the Maritana name. Can't wait to taste them. Arbrina. I don't know if you're in California or in Puerto Rico, but in Puerto Rico, it's with Almacén del Vino. They're delicious wines. I mean, on the mouth, I mean, this is a very structured wine. I mean, it has great acidity. To me, acidity is key for wine food pairings and to clean your palate. But also has depth, structure. But it's agile. It doesn't feel disjointed. Some of these wines made in this style, once they hit the palate, they can, go all over the place, or maybe the speed is just, it's impossible to catch either to the oak or to the weight of the wine. But this, it really is the typical powerful wine with lots of grace and lots of agility. I mean, and the finish, it reverberates. It's quite long. It's quite long.
I think so too. But all those flavors are good flavors, and there is even a little hint of that reductive character, that slightly smoky note. It probably comes off as oaky, a little bit oaky, but it's not. It's derived from the way that the wine is made and the interaction between the yeast and the wine during the aging process when it's aged sur lie.
Does this see any oak here?
Oh yeah, this is, as I mentioned, this is all barrel fermented in small.
Okay, you said it. My bad.
But I have this awesome source, which I probably shouldn't talk about, but because all my winemaker friends will be calling up trying to get the barrels from it too. But 1-year-old white barrels are the most difficult to find typically, and I have a friend that sells me some from their winery because they use a lot of new barrels every year. So I'm getting really beautiful 1-year and 2-year-old barrels that I think add complexity but aren't heavy-handed.
Yeah, I mean, this is a wine that keeps changing and evolving and opening up in the glass. I mean, to me, those wines that you tend to remember the most are those that, like an onion, they have layers and they start to peel, and then you discover new things. And I mean, this is a different wine from when I first poured it about 30 minutes ago, and it keeps changing. And another thing, here in Puerto Rico, obviously, we have, much hotter weather than you guys have. But if a wine is bad, I mean, chill it, like drink it really cold. When you have a great, exceptional wine such as this one, even if it's not even cool, it's just room temperature, it's delicious. I mean, the aromatics, really, really get out. I just want to ask you in terms of food pairings. I'm a foodie. I love eating, and I love pairing my wines with food. I tend to first pick the wine, and then I pick the food. Like, that's how obsessed I am. I tend to do that.
That is truly a wine person.
Yeah. So what would you pair this with?
It doesn't really matter what the food is. I want to drink the wine I want to drink, whether it goes with whether it's the perfect match or not, which I'm not really sure there is a perfect match. But you asked me about Chardonnay, and this particular Chardonnay, I think, the interesting thing for me about California Chardonnay is how well the well-made ones go with the local crab here, Dungeness crab. I just think that when God created Dungeness crabs, he just said, yeah, and by the way, let's make this grape variety called Chardonnay to go with it and put it in California. Why not? I just think it's a fantastic one, but I also really love it with scallops, the seared on one side.
Oh, love that. I was going to say that. Yeah.
It's really good.
And this can even stand next to a lobster risotto with lots of cheese and the creaminess. The wine is creamy, but it's not sweet. The wine has very good acidity, but it doesn't cut your tongue. I mean, it's very well. Everything is integrated. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful wine. And even though it has a long finish, it does feel, as you said, delicate, floral. Even if it's a California Chardonnay, which sometimes are big, chunky ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want to tell you a quick side story. When I first got interested in wine, when I very first got interested in wine, it was in the late 70s and early 80s, and one of my favorite wines ever was released relatively early in my wine drinking career from Chalone Winery. This is way back when Chalone was a big deal, a tiny little winery with this tiny little vineyard, and it was exactly the opposite of what I'm trying to make right now. It was thick and oily and intense and just sort of mouth. It was like doing a shot of olive oil almost. It was just covered the whole mouth, and it poured out. You could hear the sound of it pouring into the glass was different. Exactly. And I was so impressed by that. I thought, oh, this is the greatest Chardonnay ever. And frankly, now it probably wouldn't turn me on in the same way, but it was exciting to drink at the time. So there you go. You come all the way around. There's nothing wrong with that style. It's just not the style I want to drink today and not the kind I want to make today. So I love when I meet such an accomplished person like you are in the wine business. So now you have the liberty to make the wines that you like to drink. Not everybody can do that. A lot of people have to make wines to pay bills, but you have that liberty. Like once you've reached the mountaintop, in many ways, and I appreciate you taking my call. I mean, you're talking to a mere blogger here, but there's not a lot of things to do outside, right? You can't go anywhere.
you might as well.
That's not why. It wasn't a default position. I was thrilled to be able to do this. Are you kidding?
Thank you. Thank you for your kindness, Donald.
Let me ask you. To be here.
I'm getting questions from also, I have a Facebook account. They're asking me, when you started, why Pinot and why Chardonnay? Are you like a Burgundy lover? Like, why start with those two grapes?
So are we talking specifically about Maritana, or are we talking
about Patz and Whole? Like, they're asking me, did anything, let me read the question. Did anything make him choose Pinot Noir and Chardonnay? And in parentheses, they say Burgundian obsessive person. Like, you know, they're trying to say like whether you were, you know, Burgundy was, I guess, your inspiration. That's what they're asking.
Anybody that is interested in Chardonnay and Pinot Noir has to pay attention to what has happened in the past and what's currently happening in Burgundy. But the truth is that, and I like Chardonnay and Pinot Noir a lot, and I drink a lot of it. But when we started Patz & Hall, one of the key issues for us was how much financing do we have? And so the idea was, let's make something that we know, we're going to make Cabernet. That's a 2.5 or 3 year process where we don't get to sell anything and we're not making any money. So Chardonnay would allow us to make wine and begin selling it in 12 months, or even a little less if you want to, but it was a 12-month cycle for us. So there was a couple of big drivers. One is there was a lot of interest in Chardonnay, especially then. And the other one was the ability to actually make it work as a business. And once you get to those 2 points, then you start to say, okay, what style do we want to make? What other kinds of things do we want to bring to the table? And we really wanted it to be a dramatic wine that was also, like I said earlier, about being refreshing. We wanted it to be dramatic and refreshing and intense. Chardonnay was the main thrust. In fact, we only made Chardonnay from 1988 until 1995, which was our first vintage of Pinot Noir. Mm-hmm. And we talked about doing other red varieties internally quite a bit, with the idea of maybe not so much Cabernet Sauvignon, because, you know, kind of being in the Napa Valley, you really knew that there was a lot of people making it. So we thought about other grape varieties, and it was, I think, luck and also coincidence that at the exact same time there was a lot of replanting going on, particularly in Sonoma, where they were ripping out vines that either had become old or were being affected by excuse me, what am I thinking of? The root louse.
Yeah.
And so there was a transformation in vineyards happening, and people were beginning to put in these new Dijon clones of Pinot Noir. And it probably wasn't obvious to everybody else, but internally it was really obvious to us that a transformation was about to happen with Pinot Noir. And it's a red wine. It makes a lot of sense with Chardonnay. In a lot of cases, it's sort of like making Chardonnay.
So you had already been making Pinot when the Sideways thing exploded in 2003.
It did. And a funny thing is, a friend of mine called me up when Sideways came out and said, "Man, are you selling Pinot Noir like crazy?" And I said, "No, because we're already sold out before the movie came out."
Exactly.
I'm hoping it helps next year.
Yeah, for sure.
It doesn't matter.
Let's go into the Pinot, Donald. Let's go into the Pinot. Yeah, let's go into the Pinot. I mean, this is the label right here for my viewers in Puerto Rico who want to purchase these delicious, unbelievable wines. You can get them through Almacén del Vino.
You have to be able to read backwards because this is mirror images here, but.
And I love the art. I love the art.
Thank you.
We should talk about that as well. I mean, look at the for the Chardonnay, you obviously have the white grapes there, and it's like something, like some kind of painting or some kind of art. And obviously for the Pinot, it's digital.
It's digital. Yeah,
very nice.
The young woman that did it is a Korean woman. My wife is Korean, and my stepson had connections in Korea with this very young, just getting started artist. And she made a couple of attempts at a label. We had plenty of time. And the first couple of ones, I just go, no way. I don't, not even, she's not ever going to come up with. And then suddenly out of the blue, this one came along, and I thought, that's awesome. And the thing I really love about it is, and I chose the font for Maritana to be able to do this as well. It looks great as a poster. And I wanted it to have that sort of, like, feel like it could have been a poster in France. 100
I'm
years.
gonna Liz Bella. I don't know if you're in Puerto Rico or not. I'm gonna type in the name of the wines. I mean the winery and the wines. It's Maritana. You get them with Almacén del Vino by Fernandez. These are unbelievable wines. If you like Chardonnay, if you like Pinot Noir, you got to try them. I mean, Donald, the Pinot here, the nose is so sexy. I mean, has cola, spice, rhubarb, forest floor, a little bit of freshness. I don't know if it's menthol or some kind or mint, like pine. It smells like Christmas a bit. Maybe that's crazy what I'm saying, but it's delicious.
It's great.
What can you tell me about the Pinot?
Again, I wanted it to be different from Patz and Hall, and so unlike the Chardonnay, where I use a lot less new barrels, I really hit heavy with new oak, because I think the greatest Pinots typically have a lot of new barrels when you go to Burgundy, and I also wanted a wine again that's refreshing. I picked these grapes quite a bit less ripe than. I'm just not picking on anybody. I'm not saying that one thing's right or one thing's wrong, but I really wanted a little bit lower alcohol and also greater acidity and focus in these wines. And to me, Pinot Noir is all about aromas. It's easy to, not easy, but it's been done in California to make it look super dark and be super tannic, and those wines never smell like Pinot Noir to me. And to me, Pinot is about aroma. It has to be. Pinot
has to have a pleasant stinkiness to it. The good Pinot. I don't know why, but I love the fact that it's 13.5 alcohol. There are some Pinots out there that are, very, very much higher than that. And we
made them at Patz and Hall.
But
a few of ours that
but if you don't handle the wheel, or if you step on the gas way too hard, I guess they can become, I don't know, I guess a bit over the top, sweet, juicy, jammy, and then, you can spread them on toast like marmalade, I guess.
Yeah.
But this one is delicious.
Look, there's a bunch of people out here all over the United States that love that style.
Yeah.
And that's a legitimate style.
And if they like it, they like it.
Yeah, they like it, they like it. This is the style that I like. I've always wanted that moment where somebody tries one of my Pinots and maybe I'll just keep smelling this until it disappears. Instead of drinking it, I'll inhale it over the next few hours. Yeah. It smells so good. That's what I want. That is more important than anything else. You might end up with a little more delicate wine. It might not be as intense, rich, or may not be as high as alcohol, but if it smells like that, that's what I want.
I love the texture. I love the texture, because some of these ethereal wines that are elegant could be a little diluted or thin, but here on the palate, it feels nuanced, layered, agile. It's not over the top big, but it's not thin. It's like right in the middle. I mean, it's like the chords in a guitar. I mean, the strings. I'm sorry, not the word chords. The strings in a guitar that are perfectly positioned. I mean, this is so well made, and I love the cherry fruit much more than the black fruit. It's the red fruit, the vibrant cherry fruit, and then you got that element that I also found in the Chardonnay, where the wine sort of evolves and changes and opens up and shows you a different face every time you put your nose to it. And as you said, it's a wine that I cannot stop smelling. It's just unbelievably good.
Success!
And very little makeup. I mean, very little makeup. There are some wines that are, when I say makeup, like barrel or super jammy, picked really late. Here at 13.5, it's, I don't know if you can talk about this, but it feels to me that for a number of years, maybe as of a decade ago, they were making over-the-top, huge wines, and now is there this sort of trend to pull back a bit, or that's not happening?
I think those people that are really locked up to the wine business and really paying close attention, you'll see that's what's happening. But to the average consumer, it's not really that apparent. If you go to your old school producers, they're continuing to do things that were successful for them, and they should. So there's, what I sort of think more than anything else is happening is that there's a spreading out of styles. So not everybody is trying to produce, the same thing as Screaming Eagle. Or not everyone is trying to produce, and I'm not picking on them again, Kistler or something like that. You don't have to be exactly the same at a different price. What you want to do is you want to be yourself. You want these grapes to reflect their place and how your vision of that place gets translated into a bottle. And so I think that there's a widening of the styles and appreciation for that widening. Right? I feel sad when I hear people say, I never drink California Chardonnay anymore. It's just all the same. It's not. There's an enormous variety of Chardonnays being made.
In types of complexities.
All the way from the super butterscotchy school through, some that are super
Stone and lemon. Stone and lemon, yeah. Okay, I want to ask, I've held you for 35 minutes. I want to ask you about two things, Donald.
We can do this for a couple hours if you want to.
Thank you so much.
I got more wine here. So.
I want to ask you about that. I mean, the other day I was talking to Andres Lugo, my dear friend from Almacén del Vino, and I saw this beautiful red door on a label of a wine. And maybe we can do a different program some other time about that project. But can you touch about that project a little bit? Because everyone who's tried it here in Puerto Rico, this is Cabernet Sauvignon. They're telling me, my God, you got to try that wine. Talk a little bit about that one.
That's called Secret Door, is the name of the brand. And when I met the woman who is now my wife, she was living in Virginia. And I was trying to convince her to move to California to be with me. And one of the things she actually said to me, I don't really like Pinot Noir that much anyway. I'd rather drink Bordeaux or Napa Valley Cabernet. So I said, fine, move to California to be with me, and someday I will make Cabernet Sauvignon for you.
Had you ever made Cabernet before? Had you ever made Cabernet?
Flora Springs was all about Cabernet.
Oh, yeah, true. You started there. My bad.
I also worked at Girard Winery and had worked with some other people that also made Cabernet. So it's not that big a stretch. I also had a lot of friends who
I'm sure you do. You're super friendly and sympathetic.
I got one of my old buddies to be my wingman on the Cabernet project for the first year, just more than anything else to make sure that I was communicating to the team that I was working with exactly what I wanted them to do and the way I wanted them to do it. So I think the wines have turned out really beautifully. The red door that you're talking about is the first vintage. That's the 2014. Each vintage has its own door. So here's the 2017.
Beautiful. And why the door? Like the door to your heart or the door to your promise?
I don't know. It wasn't really directly to the promise that I made to my now wife. It's more that I think there's something intriguing about doors. And if you go on Instagram, we're doing Instagram right now, and just do #door, you'll suddenly find there's just an enormous world out there of people who are obsessed with doors, take pictures of doors wherever they go. And there's some really interesting doors around. But I think there's symbolism here, too. First of all, people love secrets. Everybody thinks that they're really good at keeping them. Most people aren't. But secrets are kind of, they're the essence of our lives. We revolve around the secrets that we have and keep. Doors have three states, as far as I can tell. There's the locked door that you can't get through. There's the door that's wide open, and you don't even notice it. You just walk through the doorway. And then there's the door that's closed but not locked, and it requires effort to get through. So I really think that Secret Door is more the third one. The one, in order to make great wine, the door is there, but you have to make an effort to go through.
Sometimes that door is fear. I mean, the locked door is impossibility. The open door is perhaps something that's easy. And maybe that door that you have to dare yourself to try and open, it's sometimes fear, or I guess a little bit of shame or other mental states, and those are the things that sometimes pull you back in life. What a beautiful analogy you shared with me. Okay, I got one last question, Donald.
All right.
They're asking me if you could recommend some of your favorite wines that you don't make. I mean, you don't have to get into brands, but you can tell us some of the wines that you love to drink that are not made by you.
I'm a super eclectic wine drinker, and so funny thing happened. I noticed that there was somebody put up a bottle of Patz and Hall a couple of years ago on their Facebook page, and that they were going to be drinking it. And I looked closely, and I realized it's in Germany. Well, that's interesting. I didn't ship any wine to Germany, but somehow it got there. And I saw the last name was Fischer, and I thought, could this be somebody from Dr. Fischer Winery? And wow, would that be cool? And it was, in fact, a woman whose family has owned the Dr. Fischer Winery for generations. So I love Riesling, and so I was thrilled to be able to
love Riesling.
The best Rieslings are some of the most glorious white wines in the world, and some of them are a little weird, I have to say. I mean, the ones that are super smell like diesel fuel or rubber hoses aren't my favorite, but the purity that you can get with those is just stunning. So I love drinking. Also, I love drinking Zinfandel, but I don't want to drink 18% alcohol Zinfandel. Yeah. I really find that when they're made at a modest alcohol level, somewhere around 14 is fine, or a little bit more, sometimes even a little less, but 14 seems like the right number to me. They can be just delicious with the right kind of food. But Cabernet, I drink Chardonnay, I drink wines from everywhere. Yeah.
Spanish wines, you like Tempranillos and Rioja and Rivera?
I do, but Priorat probably, even more than that. Yeah.
Yeah, Priorat is very complex.
I mean, who doesn't love, Grenache is
You're
like,
my kind of guy. You love all wines. Like,
we're going to end up having a good time when I get there. Or come see me. We'll drink here.
I'm doing an interview with, I did an interview with the people from Pio Cesare in Piedmont.
Yes.
I mean, the very well-known Barolos and Barbaresco, about the COVID situation and what can we do to help. You know, in Italy, most of the restaurants are mom and pop businesses, you know, and they're really hurting. They're closed. I mean, and, you know, I believe that even after COVID passes, the scare throughout the world will probably hurt the people who go and visit and go to the vineyards over there in Italy and Spain. So my last question to wrap up, what can we do to help, like, wine lovers, wine consumers, all of my viewers and yours, I guess, once the situation stabilizes and we get some sort of normalcy back? What can we do to help the wine industry?
I think I'm now going to be selfish a little bit, but the truth is that so many of the brands that we think are small aren't. So much of the wine industry, especially California, is dominated by 3 or 4 producers. Mm-hmm. And they make dozens and dozens of brands. And the differences between those wines sometimes isn't that great. I guess what I would ask your viewers is try to find small independent producers of wine and buy their wines for the next 6 months. Rather than, you know, that I'll pick on Gallo because they're big. You know, Gallo's not going to go out of business. If you stop buying, if you don't buy their wines, if you personally or I personally don't buy their wines, they're not going out of business. And they got super deep pockets. They could get loans till tomorrow, till forever. So, but some of these little guys might go out of business.
That's very generous from you, Donald. Thank you so much for your time. It's been 43 minutes that I've really enjoyed, and technology allows for us to feel like we're sitting either at your place or my place, enjoying a great. Come here, buddy. I want you to meet a legend of wine. This is the future wine drinker from the 2013 vintage, right there. I'm buying a whole bunch of wine from his year to collect and store to drink with him in the future. So
I think that's a great idea.
It is. I'm buying a lot of Napa, a lot of Tuscany, a lot of Piedmont, and I love Riesling. It's my favorite grape, and Pinot as well. Donald, thank you so much for your kindness, your time, your knowledge, and your honesty. Thank you so much, man. These are brilliant wines. Once again, for my viewers, go to Almacén del Vino, or if you don't live in Puerto Rico, look for Maritana. Both the Chardonnay and the Pinot Noir are unbelievable. They're gracious, elegant, but still very sort of versatile, gastronomically versatile wines. I mean, they're intriguing, they're sexy, and at the same time, they're approachable. It's you do a little bit of magic here, my friend. What do you say if we do the other one, the cab, in the
I'd love to.
weeks? We can do that.
Yeah.
All right, my friend.
Let's do it.
Cheers. Let's do a little Ching ching here. Have a great night and keep making magic for all of us. Take care,
Thank
buddy.
you. Look
Stay
forward
safe
to
and
it.
strong. Bye-bye.
You too, man.
Bye.